everyone! Blue Star Saber here once again to do another One Piece chapter review. Chapter 1097, Ginny. This is a very late review since chapter 1098 has technically unofficially come out, and I have read that chapter, so I know some events that will spoil the events of this chapter, but I am not going to review it like I know the contents of the next chapter and just what I was like thinking of this chapter at the time of when 1097 came out. But yeah, so that's how I would intend to review it, not with the context of 1098. So yeah, I'm just going to do that. But yeah, this chapter pretty much follows off after the events of how Kuma, Ivankov, and Ginny escaped from the events of God Valley, while also setting up the events for when God Valley will probably actually be shown. Because at the moment we've gotten teased about which pirates were actually there and how on earth the event take place, but we did not actually get to see the battle, but which is probably for the best, as this is focusing on Kuma's black backstory. So let's see. After Ivankov was left to go on his own journeys, arguably to eventually join with the Revolutionary Dragon, this chapter will likely follow the events of Kuma's life with Ginny. And we'll see whether or not, let's see when they will join the Revolutionary Army. Let's see, will they have Bonnie? When Kuma will become king? Those are all questions that will we see or will we not see in this chapter? But though granted, chapter 1098 has already answered that, but that's just the questions you would probably have gotten before when 1096 has ended. But anyway, on to the chapter, though before that, we've got the cover of, 197, where readers requested that Bartholomew Kuma is catching salmon in the river by Takashi, in which you see a young Kuma trying to use his paw fruit to try and catch fish, it seems, or at least trying to grab, with Ginny trying to prepare barbecue, at least an older Kuma and an older Ginny, as well as the two members of Barney's crewmates that were picking on Kuma in the last chapter. Now, granted, I think when this reader did this request, it was probably before the Kuma backstory began, and it was probably he was expecting like a modern day Kuma to try and do this, but instead, to emphasize on that bare equality. But I have a feeling Oda decided to save this reader's request in order to cover some sort of to show Kuma in this young adult stage of the life, and give a hint about the contest with Ginny and the others in this chapter, which I think sort of matches up with what we have seen. But yeah, I definitely say it's a nice chapter that it's probably chosen what cover chapter Oda's decided to fit in with this flashback. It may not be a part of the actual canon timeline, but it does feel like it's something that could happen in this world of in the backstory of Kuma as a montage. And I wouldn't be surprised if some people wanted to see this cover as canon. So yeah. But anyway, the chapter begins 8 years after the events of God Valley incident, which is 30 years ago, where Ginny is asking for Kuma for help, with a bunch of the elders talking about how they are glad to see Kuma here, as they've been coming to this church when Kuma's father was there. Hang on a second, people. Sorry about that. Something fell down. But yeah, we have elders who have been coming to this church. This church which belongs to we learn that it belongs to Kuma's father until he suddenly disappeared, which they have no idea why. As we are at the Sobek Kingdom of South Blue. But they're all happy to see that Kuma has become great pastor and would probably make their father proud, or their parents are proud. As we see Kuma at the age of 17, as he's been titled a pastor, and you see him dressed up one, though in a bit of ragged clothes, so you can see the patch on his suit, where he is healing elderly folks with his paw fruit, removing the pain for them as they are thankful. But they're asking if they can, if he can, do it more regularly, but Ginny forbids it, saying it's only Sundays, because, that's a holy day, but yeah. But we see a elderly Ginny who is now at the age of 21 years old, and she's got the standard older Nami clone body, if you will. But see, though her, I think, long bits of hair still put out. Though she's wearing a sort of a tank top shirt that has sister in and some very short jean shorts, if you will. So yeah, Oda likes to emphasize on the legs, as you can probably tell. But yeah, let's see the legs, as he done with Nami quite a few times. But yeah, it's the standard design that Oda has done for thing, and she's behaving in a similar manner to Bonnie, which probably emphasizes that she is indeed Bonnie's mother. But yeah, but she is getting a bit angry, saying that that these lot are asking too much, even though they're not paying any money. So tells them to not be greedy. Would the elders amusingly call her a cheapskate, even though she tells them to shut up, and even though they're foul mouth, but they at least seem to be at least fond of her, and even comment how every man in the town seems to be vying for their affection. But they seem to imply that she has got Kuma, implying that these two are sort of like a couple, or at least they believe they're a couple. And they do enjoy that the slight face of Kuma, and they even comment that Kuma's warm face puts him at ease, which he does. Thank them, though Ginny thinks that Kuma's too soft on them. But we then learn that the elders would be more than happy to give Kuma money, but we learn that the heavenly tribute that this kingdom does is taking as much as more than enough money that it can. And this new king has not helped matters. As we learn this, the king of Sobek Kingdom before Kuma, at least, is called a King Bikori, who is considered a cruel man. So that, let's see, so who takes their money away so they can't pay for being sick and all that stuff. And any pretty defiance against him, especially if they can't pay, they'll throw in jail. The elders keep talking how horrible he is. And apparently, I heard that, and to emphasize this, one of their friends, or at least someone they know, got tossed in a cell and starved to death. And we see apparently that the king is listening in on them from a Den Mushi. And he seems to enjoy hearing all these cruel things about him, but it's like he's spying on his own people. And let's see, he's clearly, as they talk about how he's clearly a puppet for the Celestial Dragons. And they always say they have to try and be healthy, otherwise it's a death sentence. But Kuma assures them that he can heal any light illnesses or pain, and tells them to come every Sunday, which they thank him for, and they leave. But we then learn later the night that Kuma has absorbed all their pain into one of his shock paw things, and then, similar to what Zoro did in Thriller Bark, he takes it all in and endures all their pain. Much to Ginny's dismay, as you can see her crying as a result of this, with her being worried since he does this every week, and the villagers have no idea how much they suffer for him doing this. But Kuma insists that he needs to do it because there's no other way to do it, as if someone doesn't take that pain, it will disappear and return back to the people who originally had. So Kuma is more than willing to take their pain to see their happiness, if you will, and even apologizes to Ginny for doing this to her, but she's not. But she doesn't see this as the issue, as I think she just doesn't want Kuma to get hurt. But let's see, Kuma does mention to her that they gotten some food from those elders, so she gets happy about the food and they start eating. And then we cut to 25 years ago, where Kuma is now at the age of 22, and which means that Ginny is, I believe, 26, since I think she's 4 years older. Yes, she's 24 years older, in which she asks Kuma if they can get married, but Kuma says no, and she demands why, since she knows that she probably does love him. He does love her, and she thinks that she can make her happy, which Kuma tries to explain that that's true, but thinks back to the reason that, given what happened to his father, and what happened to his father and him for having Buccaneer blood, even the mother was taken as prisoner. He just thinks that he doesn't want to bring her the same fate of what happened to his parents. So, granted, she doesn't tell her this and tries to change topic to an article about the freedom fighters, where they have caused protests in several countries, and now have been given bounties and now wanted by the world government. As he talks about how cool Dragon is, and it's a hero he wants to be. He even wants to go out to sea one day and to use his life to help others too. But as this is going on, they get a knock on the door. With some people asking in there, and it's Barney's two crewmates, including, I think, the one called hold on, let me just get his name. Barney Pirates. I believe his name is Geo, which I think means fish, though, because this which seems to be fitting, since Kuma actually thanks him by calling his name Geo, which apparently means fish. So, they're clearly the joke here, but Bonnie's future pirate crew, all blushing in here, loving Ginny and all that stuff. They saying they caught a haul of fish, so they want to offer it to them, with Kuma thanking them, but Ginny is throwing a basket at them, thinking that let's see, probably arguably for trying to ignore maybe her marriage request, I assume. Or maybe Kuma just trying to be changing the subject, or just trying to be too nice again. Who knows? But who knows? I do wonder if she actually knows why Kuma turns down. And then we cut to 22 years ago, where when the narration says a disaster struck, where Kuma is trying to get back some prisoners, and there appears to be some elderly folk. Where we see the royal army that are holding them prisoner, and they just calling Kuma a violent thug. Kuma is now age of 25. Where Cooper says he's the pastor from the church from the south, after they ask who he is. Let's see, and the soldiers inform him about how the laws of the land's changed, and they're free to do whatever they want to the people of the south. Kuma furious that they're trying to turn them into slaves. Angry, for the first time ever, he uses his paw fruit to attack, and they declare this as a rebellion. And then we cut to where the Sobek King is, where I think an advisor, or maybe a guard, I can't tell, tells them that this new policy is pretty ritzy. This new policy is done is going pretty poorly amongst the citizens of this kingdom. The king has insisted that they will, they eventually come to it, particularly those up north, against those in the south. as it's revealed that the king has decided to make only the northern part of the Sobek kingdom officially recognized as the actual kingdom, and the south is a lawless area. So the world can't. So that way, the world government will only demand half the tribute, because the amount of people living in a kingdom determines the amount of the tribute that is paid, apparently. So since the old people in the south can't pay, let's see, they'll be cut loose, and let's see, the top half of the country will have more to prosper and be more balanced. So he's pretty much sacrificing half his kingdom. We see a map where the elderly village is, and where Kuma's church is, and the rest of the kingdom at the top, particularly the royal castle and the royal city. And we see that Kuma is in prison along with Ginny and the future members of Barney's pirate crew, with Geo. With Kuma asking why they are here, but Ginny reveals that they were trying to demand Kuma's release, but they got beaten to a pulp as Jaro finished that sentence, while the others just laugh. And hold on a sec. And this part here is where Kuma says that he's realizing that their kingdom is turning into a horrible place, with her agreeing that since Beko is just a puppet for the celestial dragons, and apparently they're the ones that came up with this idea, saying that they want to fight back, they need to fight the world government. And during this, we see that the Sobek kingdom is under attack, as we see an explosion, with the guards being taken out, with one of them telling the king to run away. And we see silhouettes of Dragon in Ivankov, with Ivankov saying that they won't let them escape, mocking him for being a sad imitation of celestial dragons. And Dragon says that this king makes his blood boil with anger. We see that we then see the citizens of the kingdom celebrating as the king has surrendered. The enslavement policy is no more. Let's see, with them happy that they don't have to live like that. As the narration says, that through someone's interference, the Sobek kingdom avoided disaster. With Ivankov and Dragon entering the dungeon, realizing that it's with Ivankov telling that Dragon, the man that he knows, will probably impress him and all that stuff. It will impress him, as Ivankov introduces himself to Ginny and Kuma, telling them here to get out, as he realized they had been imprisoned, much like the shock of Ginny and Kuma. Let's see that he's here. I do like how Ginny keeps calling Britzy Ivankov Big Bro, and with Ivankov saying if Kuma's still the same boy he is back then, telling them to come with us and change the world. And then we see that Kuma and Ginny have joined the freedom fighters that eventually become the Revolutionary Army, as we see a bunch of cool-looking designs of freedom fighters, and Kuma wearing now the same getup as Ivankov and Dragon in the early stages, and Ginny, while not wearing the same outfits, got more of those leg straps. I think I saw Bello Betty have. As the narration says that the freedom fighters led protests in countries around the world. And after the arrival of the Great Era, saying that this came around the same era as the Great Era of piracy. And then, of course, followed the tragic fall of O'Hara. The group took up arms. And with the addition of the Kuma with the two pillars of Dragon and Ivankov, they went under the transformation, of course, that was the Revolutionary Army that would later became feared throughout the world, particularly to the world government. And then we cut to Dragon, talking about how they lack funds, while we see a bunch of revolutionaries in a battle. It's revealed that Dragon's plans to build up his forces is to act like mercenaries and lend their strength to rebellious elements seeking to overthrow their kings, arguably corrupt ones. saying that those who wish to join will be taught how to use these weapons and fight with them, as he wants to one day raise a massive army that can scatter across the globe. So we have that. And Kuma ends up asking Dragon how did he learn to use these tactics as well as how to use these weapons. As we see Dragon on a ship, which appears to be probably the early freedom fighter ship with like this with a sword marking instead of a dragon marking. And Dragon reveals that he spent some time with the Navy, confirming that theory that he was once part of the Navy. But he said he didn't find any justice there, so he left. Let's see with Ivankov coming, that the irony about how both the Revolutionary Army and the Marines both want to help people, but they are at odds with each other. But Kuma is confident that he will be with Dragon all the way, with Dragon promising him that he won't regret it. And then we see that 8 years have passed, where Kuma is coming back to his kingdom, as the elders are still there. When Kuma reveals that he comes there now and then to check up on them and make sure that they're all okay and healthy and all right. And they think he's a sweetheart for this. And then we see about 14 years ago in a certain country, we see that Ginny is leading a group of revolutionaries, with them commenting that she's looking happy. Let's see. As she realizes, as we see her much older now, with like a chicken bone in her mouth, we're holding a gun now, and she realizes, okay, so it's showing. In fact, I would probably say no, that's just a drawn silhouette of Ginny's drawing, as like saying that tomorrow's a big day since they're going to meet up with Kuma's group, and she's excited about that, as it's revealed that she is the Revolutionary Army's Army's Eastern captain or commander at this point in time, depending on which translation. With many of the troops there wishing that they were Captain Kuma, thinking that he, since everyone here has a huge crush on Ginny, and thinking that he's lucky to have her affections. But she's annoyed by them. For saying that they're all having a crush on her, telling them to grow up and stop being gross. They all comment what a mouth is, but then we see some dark silhouettes of her feet. And then we cut to the Revolutionary Army's headquarters in Baltago, with someone trying to report to Dragon, as he starts seeing a bit of him being a bit shocked or a bit nervous or sweating, if you will, as he learns that Ginny has been captured, as someone's apologizing that the enemy has caught them unaware, ending the chapter on this cliffhanger. So, that's the chapter, which is shorter than usual in 13 pages, which has led some to worry that Oda's health problems is causing him to reduce the chapter size, as that's what happened to the My Hero Academia mangaka, which I recall some of them were just half chapters. Which some, like, if you've been paying attention to my My Hero Academia reviews, and and not to mention other mangaka doing that himself, and there's also the worry about Oda's health and Oda's health after like the eye surgery. Granted, it could be that Oda wanted more content but didn't have enough time to do them all, and so had to shorten the chapter. Whatever the reason, it is shorter, but it is still a pretty good chapter, as we're pretty much learning Kuma and Ginny's life together when they of course as we see, Kuma grew up to be a sort of church pastor, which I think very much fits with like what we've known of Kuma beforehand, with like him carrying a holy Bible, if you will, and so it emphasizes like Kuma really is like a holy man. In fact, arguably this chapter, Kuma is shown to be more of a saint than the actual world nobles, as he's using his powers to help the elderly and remove their pain. And then, of course, we learn that he takes the pain for himself. So it's like what he did to Zoro, he did on a regular basis, and that has honestly earned a lot of mad respect for him from like some of like the other people that let's see that Kuma that from the fan base at the very least, because it's like we know that was one of Zoro's most badass moves. We said nothing happened. Hold on a sec. Sorry, just checking on something. But so yeah, what was arguably one of Zoro's most best moments, Kuma done on a weekly basis, and yeah, healing everyone on a Sunday because, well, of course, Sunday is of course regarded as the holy day for Christianity, where people go to church to pray and all that stuff. So that's rather fitting. But throughout the week, he endures pain from like all the elders. Granted, it's minor illnesses and minor injuries, but he takes that pain and he endures it so that they don't have to suffer, because if it's left unattended, it will eventually go back. It will eventually go back to like the original owner. So Kuma had to take it all, so they won't be injured. So they won't be all injured and hurt even worse. Now, I do wonder if that means that Kuma. It does make some people wonder if Kuma was originally going to take all of Luffy's pain for himself, but Zoro offered him his life. When Zoro offered his life, he just gladly accepted, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kuma saw a little bit of himself within Zoro at that point, or at least gained a bit of mad respect for him. I am very curious to see if the Straw Hats will learn the full story, which I predict Frankie will probably end up crying his eyes out harder than he's ever done before. But I really want to know how Zoro will react to Kuma doing like that, doing what he did to him on a daily basis. So yeah, that would be kind of cool to see. But it's interesting to learn that Kuma's family were like owners of the church, pastors themselves. His father's probably a pastor himself. Maybe I'm just at least speculating, but they clearly at least own the church. So they had clearly like a very religious family, or at least a holy family at the very least. And it's interesting to learn that this family is very popular with the elderly here, and are quite fond of Kuma, and even Ginny even though she's a bit of a foul mouth, which I will admit I do quite like. That this sort of emphasize that, okay, at the very least, she is likely Bonnie's mother, or at least Jissy. She is like Ginny was at the very least cloned for her. Just remember, even though chapter 1098 is unofficially out right now, I am just reviewing context with this chapter from where it is, so I won't go on the whole parenting situation just yet. But I do like how the elderly are like but I do like how she seems to be like, even though Kuma's the nicest and sweetest person there, Ginny is the one that's trying to be strict when they are trying to demand more days for treatment, because she knows what Kuma is going through for them, and it clearly hurts her, but she clearly at least accepts it, even though she doesn't like it. So I do like how we've got that. But yeah. But it's interesting that we get to learn a bit more about this kingdom, and like how the heavily tribute prevents them from like making them so poor that they can't afford to pay for like any sickness, illness, or injury. And if they get arrested, they likely starve to death. And yeah, we got like Oda's typical ugly inside on outside royalty or noble, or king, if you will, as he let's see, this King Bekakori, who is like it's arguably one of the worst kings we've ever seen, and clearly a puppet of the world dragons. clearly obeying their every will, as we later see them as we later see down the line of this chapter. And he seems to even spy on the residents when they're trying to badmouth him. He seems to find that he seems to find this he seems to find their snide comments to be let's see, flattering, if you will. Hold on. Yeah, I think but yeah, he seems to seems to enjoy listening into their comments on him, and clearly spies on them. I'm not sure if this is a way of how he controls the masses or finds any to try and see any dissidents or rebellions and then lock them up. But yeah, so there's like that. But I do like how at the very least the elderly are able to at least give Kuma and Ginny some food, and I do like how Ginny is still, even as an adult, still seems to love the food, and I do like how happy Kuma and her are when they eat together. Though it is interesting that Ginny, by the time of 25 years ago, it's clear. I wasn't surprised when Kuma first offered to be a decoy. You just see Ginny looking at Kuma that she would eventually fall in love with Kuma, and you can see it here when she wants to ask Kuma to be married. And to everyone's probably surprise at this point, because this is 22 years ago, Kuma turns her down, much to her dismay. And I do think I do understand Kuma's reasoning, and I do understand Kuma's reasoning for it, as he tries to make excuses, and he thinks inside his head that given what happened to his own father, and when he was born, and when the world government found out about his blood, his race's blood, his entire family was imprisoned as slaves, including his mother. And he doesn't want that happen to Ginny again. Heck, he even thinks that perhaps he thinks that it's very possible that one day the world government will come and take him away again. And he does, at the very least, he wants to try and spare Ginny from that thing for not being associated or married, nor perhaps maybe having a kid to go through that ordeal again. But of course, we'll get to that whole parenting stuff there, and he tries to brush it off. And it's interesting to see that he's how he well, granted, it makes sense that he's become a great admirer of Dragon, who's leading the freedom fighters. And from at this point, they're starting to become a rather infamous group. So at the very least, we know that Dragon started the freedom fighters at least 25 years ago, maybe like an extra year or two beforehand. We don't know when the group first started, but at the very least, it's 25 years ago. But it's 25 years ago that they first start getting their first bounties, when they started liberating kingdoms from the world government. And I do like how Kuma's inspired that he wants to go out to sea and be a hero like them. But yeah, but of course Ginny knows that Kuma's trying to avoid the subject, particularly when their friends try to offer fish, and you can see everyone crushing on her. But yeah, which she gets annoyed with Kuma, but just accepts it. Though, granted, let's see, what's interesting then, 22 years ago, we end up, I do like seeing how, we've then seen how the king got much crueler with, splitting the kingdom in half, and north and south divide, and, interesting enough, this is probably the first time. This seems to be kind of reminds me of. It seems like a country always seems to be divided between north and south. Like with the U.S., you have the north and south, and their cultural divide, and like the Civil War and the civil rights and all that. And which political parties they vote, and UK, you have like the North and South usually divide as well. Though granted, not in the same way America is, but let's see how one is poorer than the other. But yeah, you kind of see that there. And but yeah, it's like the South Kingdom. We end up learning that the South Kingdom is like the kingdom end up being split. Well, the North is recognized, and the South is left to be treated cruelly, and the residents there will be treated, maybe even treated like slaves. And Kuma, and we actually get to see Kuma angry for the first time and using his fruit to attack. Well, granted, one nitpick I do have is like I wonder how on earth they were able to apprehend Kuma, because it seems like he was strong enough to probably take many of them all on. My guess is that enough soldiers, he was able to dogpile him or surround him that he couldn't fight them all. But C.S. Kuma is not quite the fighter he'd eventually be, that he'd be recognized as one of the 7 warlords of the sea. And I do like how at least one of the guards tries to question the king's policies, but you just see just how cruel he is and saying he don't care. And eventually those in the North will come to accept the policy of like just screw the South, if you will, the south of his kingdom. So yeah, it's like it's like a very cruel method to do it. But we end up learning a bit more about the Heavenly Tribute this way. The larger population size, the more they have to pay. So by cutting off some sections of the population, certain kingdoms don't have to pay for that tribute. It makes you wonder if this might even be the case with the Goa Kingdom, where, besides those in the Grey Termino, those in Luffy's villages aren't under the same protection as those in the kingdom's capital. But who knows? We don't know. But at the very least, it seems Luffy's kingdom, at least Luffy's village, was able to be peaceful for a very long time, and still remains to be peaceful, probably because since it's the village of Garp, and then they see Yonko Luffy, you probably got pirates not wanting to mess with it out of fear of retaliation. I do like how Ginny and all of Kuma's friends tried to rescue him, even though they stood no chance. Though, granted, it seems to be it seemed like history sort of repeating themselves, as you see Jiro, who I will admit, I do feel like I would have just named him just because to fish or something, because like name means fish or some type of fish, because he was just offering fish in that chapter. But it is interesting to see that the Bonnie's future pirate crew tend to seem to be arrested quite a bit. Granted, my understanding, when Bonnie escaped, they didn't escape with her, or let's see, she left them behind, which sounds a bit cruel. Though granted, I wouldn't be surprised we learn in some sort of flashback with more when it comes to Bonnie, though, or at least doubt it will be a part of this flashback. But I wouldn't be surprised when we learn how Bonnie eventually escaped. They maybe have left themselves behind and be sacrificed so that at least their captain would be safe, even if they don't get out. But they all seem to be in good spirits. But I do like Kuma's determination to try and become a hero of this land, and fight up and rise after the cruelty of this king and the whole world government, which I do find interesting how they seem to suggest this cruelty. So you really get to see just how corrupt the world nobles are, where they influence kings and nobles to treat their citizens like trash. But I do like how we see the dragon and Ivankov liberate this kingdom, and the king tries to run away, but Ivankov and dragon just try to prevent that from happening. And I do like we're seeing a bit of Dragon's emotion about how kings like this make his anger boil. And I do like what we actually get to see citizens celebrating that the Revolutionary Army's done this, because from what as we know, the world government labels them all terrorists, and so most people might think that, but those who are liberated from them see them as heroes, and it's a growing number. But I do like how Ivankov and Dragon just come up to see Kuma, like hearing about how this one dude would cause them ruckus, and Ivankov probably deduced that it was Kuma, and even offers them saying that would come to rescue them, and offers them to join them if they're still the same person. I do like how Kuma and Ginny are just like surprised to see Ivankov. And it must have been a bit of a fanboy moment that for Kuma, like his probably friend Ivankov and his hero Dragon are working together to come and rescue them. And he gladly seems to join them. Just give me a sec. Joins them. So he gladly joins them, and I will admit, I do like the sort of cool panel of Dragon and all these revolutionaries. Arguably the earliest one, and it's interesting that the Freedom Fighters were, of course, founded by Dragon and Ivankov. They were the two figures initially for it, but with Kuma being added, they eventually reorganized the revolutionaries, where he is regarded as one of the three founders of it. As this transformation made it much bigger, especially when Dragon decided to take full up arms against the world government after the Ohara incident. But it is interesting how these revolutionaries and the freedom fighters were sort of born around the time of the Great Pirate Age and all that stuff. And all these sort of like events coincide with each other, which I wouldn't be which doesn't surprise me, as I think the chaos of the Pirate Age has probably shown quite a lot of the corruption from the royal government, which has led to more rallying points and freedom fighters, as the world government probably just chooses and picks which pirates to save and all that. So yeah, I think that's what at least that's how I'm interpreting it. But it's interesting how we learn Dragon also sort of builds up like his forces over the years by first having the freedom fighters be mercenaries fighting in kingdoms and rebellions that are trying to dispose their corrupt kings, if you will. Eventually training the people there and inviting them to join the revolutionary army down the line, as he wants to try and build a huge network of forces to fight them in the long term. It's interesting to learn that how he learned all this kind of strategy is because he was once in the Marines, which has finally confirmed that theory that the Revolutionary Army is that the Revolutionary Dragon. The theory that many people have had that is he was once a member of the Marines, and he was might have been and at some point. Some thinking that he was at least vice admiral when at the time he left. But regardless of his rank, he eventually left after being disgusted by the actions, and it's confirmed here when he says that he found no justice within the Marines. Now, how long he joined remains to be seen. But granted, many theorize that since Dragon is the same age as Sakazuki and Kizaru, or Barcelona, I can't pronounce Kizaru's original name. Let's see. They probably all joined the revolutionaries at the same time, and arguably there might have been like the three amigos, if you will. But Dragon leaving was arguably considered would make Sakazuki see that's a huge betrayal, and this might, for many people, might explain why. Dragon, Akainu is particularly seemed to be having a deep hatred of Dragon. They was targeting Luffy and just referring to Luffy as just Dragon's son. Which, if this is granted, we don't know if that part of the theory is true, but if it is, it might be that we might see a sort of encounter, even skirmish between Dragon and Sakazuki, which who knows? I mean, many people are also theorizing that this fight may actually happen, since you had Garp versus Aokiji, Luffy versus Kizaru, and that leaves Sakazuki. So it's like the original three Navy admirals in the pre-time skip versus each member of the Monkey D family. And one that they may have the most personal connection to. Granted, Akino is more for pretty personal beef, but Kizaru was like as we know, one that caused Luffy quite the most trouble amongst the admirals. So yeah, we have that. But that's many people have led to speculation about Dragon now being confirmed to be a part of the Marines. But yeah. But I do like how Ivankov mentions how it's a bit of the irony of how strange it is to these two groups to be against each other, as they're both groups that technically want to help the people, but the problem is for the Marines, they are the world government's dogs, particularly the Celestial Dragons, and they have to obey them. But I do wonder if this word, the emphasis on this means that eventually, many of the more moral justice type Marines, like Smoker, Kobe, Fujitora, etc., will eventually split apart from like the more absolute justice and more of like the world government dog type Marines, and eventually work together with the revolutionary armies to help the people once they realize just how corrupt their world government actually is. Which I'll be kind of cool to see, like those types of Marines fight by side with the revolutionary army. Let's see. I do like how Kuma is completely. You can see Kuma is so confident in Dragon that he is his man, and all that, and he says he's with him all the way. And it's which leads to the sort of tragedy of like Dragon's words saying that Kuma won't regret this because of what happens at the end of this chapter. But yeah, but before that, I will say I do like how Kuma occasionally goes to visit the elderly in his at his church back at the Soviet Kingdom just to keep an eye on them. So I do like that. As we then cut to 14 years where Dragon will end up eating his words when Ginny gets captured. But it's interesting to learn that Ginny was actually the original, at one point, the Eastern Army Captain's forces before Bello Betty. We have no idea if Bello Betty even joined the Revolutionary Army at this point in time, or she's more, or at least in hints that she was at least more of a newer commander, at least maybe newer member, or at least at the very least she wasn't a high-ranking officer at the time. For we know, she could be a member of this time, but slowly. But after the loss of when Ginny got kidnapped and whatever happened to her, she eventually had to replace her. So which I think is sort of fine. I mean, it shouldn't be expected that every commander or leader or military officer in a war, in a group or army, particularly one that's fighting a war, is gonna they're all gonna end up living from the beginning to the end of this conflict. There's gonna be some casualties, but we don't know what. This chapter doesn't know what happens to Ginny yet, but it is kind of cool to see her being a sort of I do like the sort of like how she looks kind of like a badass fighter, if you will, when she's leading her forces, and I do like how she's very excited to see Kuma again, and it seems like everyone is crushing on her and her group, but she's doesn't want none of it. But she, of course, sadly ends up being captured, so yeah, so it implies a very dark fate is about to happen to Ginny soon, which no doubt, let's see, even though I know what happens next chapter, I think many people who read this chapter think that Ginny is probably likely going to die or something horrible is going to happen to her in the next chapter. But for what, we don't know, but we know that she's being captured. So, yeah. Now, granted, who has captured her, who knows? The Dark Chevalier is leaving it a mystery, for we know it could be a Guards Knight, member of the Guards Knights, maybe someone from CP0, or maybe someone from the Marines. The tragedy of this could be for Akainu or maybe Kizaru, which would Akainu just to build the long-term animosity between Dragon and Sakazuki and later Luffy and all that, or Kizaru because it might be fitting more with the current timeline of events. But let's see an Egghead, but either way, she is being captured. But whoever revealed who's captured her, I can probably tell you, especially the contents of the next chapter, people are going to hate this figure. But yeah, but she ends up being captured, so she's either going to die in that chapter, or let's see, be a prisoner or a slave. But due to the events of this chapter, and this is the bit I haven't really brought up, is many people have, like, as we see the years go by, we have yet to see Bonnie, which has led to all kinds of speculations on what she is, on what her actual birth is, which the first one, which I'm not a fan of, and I personally hope that it would not happen. This does not happen. Is like, regardless of whether or not it did happen or in the next chapter, is that Barney is actually just actually a kid and not a full-grown adult. Which as I said before, I'm against just how Otis visually portrayed Barney in the previously, particularly in this arc itself, Egghead arc itself. The other one is that she's born off screen, which is probably one of the ones that I'd probably be fine for. Barney, Ginny, I think this one was a very popular one, is that Ginny is actually Barney and has been de-aged due to the devil fruit Barney has, I think the age fruit, which was named in an SBS. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in the last review or not. And Kuma had to erase all her memories, and it's like that. Or Bonnie is a clone of Ginny, but regardless of the fate, it leads to all kinds of like it is leading to a bit of a mystery of like who's where Bonnie is, since by the time when Kuma is arrested by the king, Ginny should have been at least born there, and we don't see her, so that's led to thing. The fact that Ginny has not gotten married to Kuma has also led to speculation that Bonnie is not actually Kuma's daughter. So those theories that theory that I had of Buccaneer blood being 50-50 on the next generations of offsprings turn out not to be true. So Kuma may very well be the last Buccaneer before the events of this chapter. But yeah. But overall, it's a very good chapter of Kuma, seeing Kuma and Ginny's life together, him being a pastor, helping the elderly despite the suffering he does to himself, seeing just how corrupt the king of Sobek is, seeing the sort of dragon and Kuma meeting for the first time, how seeing the events of the Revolutionary Army forming, learning that Ginny was also part of it, but unfortunately got kidnapped, all that stuff. It's arguably a lot of very good stuff, and also learning that Dragon was a Marine. It is very good stuff of all this, and yeah, I'd give this chapter probably 8, maybe a 9 out of 10. Just with some a few nitpicks and some questions that that I've left unanswered, which may lead to some may or may not lead to some very questionable things down the line, which I'm not going to get into. But yeah, overall, it's a pretty good chapter, even though it's shorter. But I think it does deliver on the key parts. And yeah, I will hopefully review the next chapter tomorrow, at least during the week at some point. But yeah, overall, pretty good chapter for those who end up listening to this review. I hope you enjoy what I had to say. But for now, I am Blue Star Saber, signing out.